My name is Eli. I am your host and thank you for joining me this week. I'd love to hear from my audience, so be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave me a comment. Located inside of Auckland Sky Tower, Let's Play Live has some serious aspirations for the world of esports. Duane is the founder and director of Let's Play Live and founding board member of the New Zealand Esports Federation. Duane joins me today. Hi, Jane.
Hey, man.
Hi.
How are you? Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me in. It's wicked.
Duane, what were you like growing up?
I would say I'd be like every other normal kind of Kiwi kid growing up. But I guess the difference is I'm half Māori and my mum is Pākehā. So I lived in kind of two worlds, right? Like I had this kind of Māori background. So we spent a lot of time at the spacey stores. I spent time in the far north where my dad is from. And then my mum is from more city and then into to the South Island. So I just kind of nice mix of an upbringing, very sporty. So really enjoyed that, and then just tried to do my best at everything I did, and that was sort of how I was growing up.
What sports did you used to play?
So I played a lot of like everything: rugby league, rugby, touch, basketball. Was, really big into basketball, and then also into surfing and action sports. So whatever I could get my hands on, I wanted to do, and I still do to this day. I still participate in quite a few of those things. I just love it, being active.
Where did your passion for gaming come from?
It's interesting, and that's an interesting question. So I really enjoy, rather than gaming, like I grew up in spacey arcades, and some people that are a bit older would understand what it was like. We go down to fish and chip shops, put the 20-cent piece on a machine. That's how you used to like kind of book your turn. So if me and you were playing, someone would have to come behind us, put a 20-cent piece on the machine, wait for one of us to lose, and then they would be the next player. So I kind of was around that, and then I was around the first kind of generation of gaming. So I had like a Master System, which played Alex the Kid, which I loved. But I didn't spend heaps of time. It wasn't like really prevalent like it is today. And then I ended up working in it. So I spent 10 years working in video games, and I just loved the growth. It was so exciting. And I ended up working in gaming for over 10 years. And that's where my passion came, was actually the industry. And it's like, if you think about and I'll give you an example. Anything that you can think of in gaming was a possibility, especially going back maybe 10 years. And when I say that, I went to an E3, it's a big gaming conference, biggest one on the planet, and everyone went there. This was sort of pre-social media, pre-YouTube, and everyone would turn up to see what the best games were. And in one particular year, I went there, and they had NBA 2K, which is a video game. And not only did they have NBA 2K games that you could play, they actually had a basketball court, a full-size basketball court. Kobe Bryant, I mean, this is relevant because obviously, rest in peace for Kobe, big Kobe fan, right? He was there playing with the Lakers, and then later on, the Celtics came down and played. So they were shooting hoops while you could play 2K. And then in another hall was Shaun White's 20-foot skate ramp, and Shaun White was doing skate demos while you could play Shaun White. So, there's this kind of like, right? Like this, and then at nighttime, they had these parties for Activision where you would have Chris Cornell playing, you would have Rihanna playing. So it was sort of like the entertainment boom. And that's kind of what captured me. It was not so much the fanfare, but just the sheer weight of the industry. It'd be like, I guess, the movies would have been early on. That's what got me into gaming.
Do you know, so when they did, the basketball games, were they, actual basketball games?
Yeah.
Or just like play games?
So they would do a bit of both, right? So they had a basketball court where Kobe and that would actually shoot jump shots and play on the basketball court, and people like me and you could just come up and try out the new 2K. So we'd be playing the game, or maybe the Lakers would come up and play a game with me and you to sort of promote the video game. So it was kind of a bit like that, right? So that's what got me into the kind of passion of like being in the gaming industry opposed to wanting to be a gamer.
Do you know when that was? Like the big
Yeah, I
one?
mean, that's going back. I mean, LPR is 5 years, and it would have been 10 years going back. So, show my age, like, yeah, like I'd say probably in like between 2005 to 2008, whereas like where I started to really get into it. And I was part of the first batch of people working for a company that started distributing discs for PlayStation. The Nintendo GameCube I was part of, the launch of. So I was really at the start of what we saw as gaming, which it is today. So, yeah, that shows how far back I go, 15 years old.
Did you ever have like a PS2 or like PS3?
Yep. So I had a PS2 and used to love playing Jonah Lomu rugby. That was like the game back then, right? Like Jonah, you just have a whole team of Jonah Lomus running through and pinning people. And everyone remember, man, it was like the coolest. And so, yeah, I had a PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, and then now I have both consoles and a PC, just because you got to have them because I work in it, and that's how I kind of my background in gaming.
So with so at home I have a PS2, a PS3, and I'm getting the new PS5.
Nice. You got to have it. So, PS5 is going to be cool.
Yeah.
PS5 is going to be real good. So yeah, P4 is I love the PlayStation 4.
Tell us about your career journey before LPL.
Yeah, I mean, we're sort of loosely touching on it. So my background, so I like anything, and I think it's kind of, fitting for, a segment like this is, there's always a piece where people go, you can't do things, right? So my bit was about also understand that knowledge is key. You can't build a house if someone hasn't taught you how to do that. As much as you want to, you've got to learn somehow, right? Yeah. So you've got to read. You've got to be taught on videos these days. You've got to get someone who's a builder to teach you so you can actually learn the skills. So the career journey for me was I actually did quite well at school, had really good grades, so I could sort of do a lot of things. I went to law school for a lot of years out of high school, and then I went into youth branding and marketing. That was kind of what I ended up, and I was really lucky. I went to the UK, and I helped launch a drink brand. So that was the starting point, and then being really young, my first job, I got to see it for everything it was. I just worked really hard. I'll do that. And what was cool about that is that particular drink company got sold to Coke 7 months after I was working for them. No, I'm not going to say it's because of me, because there's people there, but what a great experience to see when your first job is that you get an acquisition play where someone buys out your company. So that was the first bit. And then I went into action sports. It's been a lot of years in action sports. And so I helped launch Mambo in the UK, went from like 4 of us to 110 people. And so I had this background in action sports. And action sports are really similar to esports. That's why I mention action sports. This kind of youth movement where all the young kids were doing it, and people were like, it's not a thing. Because people that will listen to this will understand this. The warehouse didn't stock bodyboards and wetsuits. Torpedo 7 wasn't a thing. You have to have gone back to those days where you had to borrow a dive suit. And so I went into action sports. And then I was lucky, someone called me up one day and said, do you want to work for a company because of your background when I got back to New Zealand and work in video games? And I was like, well, that's a cool kind of youth kind of thing. I know a bit about video games, and then went across, and that started my kind of career into esports, because I started to sell and market and then ultimately worked up in real high levels of gaming. And then I went back into action sports and helped turn on a TV channel, which helped me learn how to do TV. And then I put both those two together, and that's what formed LPL 5 years ago.
Have you ever started up your own YouTube channel?
No, I haven't. I've been around a lot of people who have, because at work everyone wants it, and I've seen a lot of my kids' friends wanting help on YouTube channels. But when you work in it with the best of the best, you don't want to be doing it like me, because I work with people who have the largest following of YouTube in Australia and New Zealand. So it's really hard to be like, oh, here's my channel. I've got like 1 subscriber, right? And that shouldn't diminish you doing it if people are watching that. It's just for me, because I work in it, I kind of help those people grow out theirs.
Like when you look at other people's, oh look, there's like 24 million.
That's right, and so that's kind of my bit. So I haven't done a YouTube channel, but for those that are kind of keen to see back in the day. I have some terrible clips of me presenting a gaming show. Used to be called The Gaming Squeeze on YouTube. Yep. Google that and you'll have a chuckle to yourself. It's pretty bad.
What do you think are the similarities and differences between translations, transition,
Traditional?
traditional sports and esports, and why these are important?
Right, similarities. Yeah, that's a really good question. So I get asked that a lot around sport and esports. Now, the first bit is that everyone wants to have the debate about, is esports really a sport? Do you think it's a sport?
Well, because you like move your hands and you get really pumped when you're playing the game and you get kind of stressed.
And you're playing as a team, right? Like someone's a
Yeah.
team or individual, and it's a competition, me versus you.
Yeah.
And by definition, it's a sport, right? So a lot of people go, is it a sport, isn't it? But you're right, it's a physical person. They just happen to be using a digital character. And so that's the sort of the starting point of it all, right? So I believe 100% it's a sport. It will be recognized as a sport soon in New Zealand. Over 40 countries around the world have identified esports as a sport, next to rugby and cricket or your traditional ones. But when you think about the similarities, is sport is about, growing out leagues. And then sport, if we're completely honest, isn't actually about the people playing. Now, when you play sport, it is, but when you get to the highest level, it's about the entertainment of sport. In other words, we want to watch the NRL, we want to watch the NBA. Those are the theatrics, they're the broadcasting of sport. Esports does that. Esports is really about the entertainment. There's a lot of people that want to watch that particular thing or that content, and that's why they're very similar. So it's going to be recognized. There are leagues and teams are getting better. And so for me, absolutely, it will be an Olympic sport in the coming years. We've already seen a lot of traditional sports get in the space. We have in New Zealand Breakers,
Yep.
the Breakaway Esports Dojo. They have a team. The Warriors NRL team have a team. The Adelaide Crows, which is AFL, they also have a team. So there's a lot of crossover from traditional sports teams getting into esports. So that's probably the similarities between traditional and esports.
Just a thing that just popped to mind. I think it was last year that New Zealand made a baseball team.
Yes, the Tuataras.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found that very interesting.
Yeah, right. So American sport is actually one that's growing in schools, so, in participation. So what we call American football or gridiron, that's coming, as is baseball. And so, yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, called the Tuataras, and they're actually in the playoffs, funnily enough. So, yeah.
So why did you start LPL? Can you tell me about that journey?
Yes, very interesting journey. So it comes back to what we were talking about as far as having, there's a couple of things, right? It's sometimes I always say to people, it is all about luck, but you make your own luck, right? And also you've got to have that knowledge. It goes back to knowledge. So remember what I was saying before is I worked in TV. So I knew what it was like to be here. I understood what it was about cameras and setting up things. So I had that knowledge. I was one of the very few people in New Zealand. There's only a small handful like myself who had worked in it for a lot of years. So I had those two things going. So I understood where the market was going. A lot of people have this, thought that you come up with $1 million idea. But really, the $1 million idea is already something that has already been created. You've worked in it. That person once did this. He learned how to do that and just kind of evolved. So mine was serendipitous. Mine was a piece where a lot of these things came together. I had a studio like we're sitting in now. I knew about gaming. I was on TV and someone said to me, do you know how to make esports for TV? And at that point in time, no one in this part of the world had ever done that. Do you know how hard that would be? You think to yourself, if someone came to you or someone else to do that, you might have the studio, but you don't know about the gaming, or you might know about the game, you don't have a studio, or all those things. So I was really lucky because I was probably one of the few people that could put it together. And I put it together, and then we did our first broadcast on Sky TV, and it was a success. And then after that, we did another couple, and from that, we built out the company of Let's Play Live. But that journey is really one that was, people didn't believe. You know how hard it is to tell people, it's got, the community that play games didn't want it to be a mainstream thing. The mainstream didn't want to watch video games. This is going back 5 years, but internationally we knew it was coming. And so it was quite a hard thing because obviously the stress of trying to set up a company, the stress of money, the stress of people then going, this isn't a thing, like no one's really supportive. You become quite isolated. You become a man alone. But that was the journey. But I was always bullish on it's gonna be a thing. And now here we are. And now we've got, it's a thing. So it's great. So that's the quick journey.
So are you guys with like the Fortnite World Cup and all that?
Yeah, so LPL as a business, for those who are watching, is we are a tournament organizer. So I go and do deals with Epic, who make Fortnite. I do deals with 2K, who make the NBA or FIFA. I do deals with all those game makers, and I put together the tournaments for the biggest tournaments in Australia and New Zealand. So some of them are, if you win my tournament, you get to go to the World Championships. On top of that, we put those leagues on TV and online via Twitch or YouTube. And for example, the one that we've got coming up at the moment is for Rocket League. Have you played Rocket League?
Yeah, I have it on my Switch.
Right. So Rocket League, we've got the rights to it. It is 75,000 US prize pool for my winning team. And they also get to go to the World Championships. It'll be broadcast on about 4 different TV networks, and it'll be online. So it's a really big event.
How do you compete?
So you will come to my studio and you will come and compete like me and you, or, team on team. And we have the biggest teams. Renegades, which are a huge gaming team, all of them. Greyhound, they all come for the money, the glory, the visibility, and ultimately to try win. So that's just one example, but we do lots of games, to your point about Fortnite World Cup. So we deal with all the top teams, all the top players, and we put on the leagues and the tournaments for them.
What was it like when you first started?
It was different because no one believed it was a thing. So you imagine walking in, and it'd be like walking into, say, your parents, right? And you go to them, we are going to ride hover bikes. I'm going to ride a hover bike to school. And they're going to look at you sideways and say, I know there's bikes, I know they're electric, but you don't have a hover bike. That's not a thing. That was what it was like. And the whole industry thought that. So when we first started, there was no structure, there was no formality to what was going on. And for us, it was like up against this kind of bit where people, and even now, people still laugh. Esports, you hear them laugh about it on TV. So that was going on, and then there was no leagues. No one was going to put this content on TV, and there was no real pathways for players. Say you're a really good player. Now there's ways for you to get in and become a professional player. There's ways for you to become a streamer and actually earn money. There's opportunities to play in big places like the NRL Grand Final. None of that was here. So it's changed a lot, and also technology's helped. We're in a studio now, and for us to be able to do this, we could stream it anywhere in the world now, our tournament. So yeah, lots of change from technology all the way through to, the infrastructure around gaming in New Zealand.
How long before you ran your first live event?
First live event was so we did a couple out of the studio, and then we did NBA 2K. So about a year. About a year later, we went, you know what, we're going to take it from the studio and we're going to put it in front of a crowd. And we did that. We ended up with about 600 people up at Sky City Theatre coming to watch it live. We had Tom Abercrombie from the Breakers come and do a curtain raiser up against Manu Vatuvei at the time from the Warriors, and they did a curtain raiser playing 2K. And then we had the best 2K players play off. Tom won. He played as the Phoenix Suns from memory. So Tom Abercrombie beat Manu, and he was the champion of a cup we made called the Sports Star Cup. So he won, which is good because he's a basketball player. He should have won. And then we had the top 2 players. And what we did, we had the best Xbox player take on the best PlayStation player. So they went together. It's like we flipped a coin, and they had to play on each other's console. So we started over here on PlayStation, then we went over there on Xbox.
It must have been so hard.
So hard.
It's different keys.
That's right. It's a different play. So it was whoever won the toss got to choose what one went the other way, right? So me and you're Xbox on PlayStation, we flip a coin, and if you win, you get two games on Xbox, and I only get one on PlayStation. But I get to choose my team first, and everyone wants Golden State. Back then, they were good. And so that was how it worked, man. And so that was kind of a cool experience, and that was our first event, and that was how it kind of went, which looking back is, pretty cool.
So how did you build LPL Loud?
So hard work, believe, like, because then this is going to be a thing. Because when you're doing that, and again, going back to the point, I can't stress it enough, is, when people are saying, what are you doing? Why are you wasting your time and your money and your effort in something that's not going to be a thing, right? And I mean, if people did that in life, well, none of this stuff would ever happen, right? Like it's like, be brave and keep doing what you want to do, and that's cool. So that was the first thing, is going, we're going to do it. Then we had the right people. Former business partner was John McRae. He helped start Duco. And Duco's a large event that did the NRL Nines and did Joseph Parker boxing events, and he did Shane Cameron David Tour. So he's a really smart guy, and he was part of it with myself. And then once you get to a certain point, you also want to go and get some partners that can help fund the process. And we built a multi-million-dollar studio in Sky City for gamers. And so we had to get a partner. And so we went to market, and we found a partner in Sky City Entertainment Group, which was the next step. And they went, we believe in your vision. Here is some money to back this venture. And that's how it kind of evolved. And that's where we are today, which is continuing to evolve. We've got staff across Australia and New Zealand, great studio up there. And that's what we do day to day. And that's how we built it.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Do you prefer Xbox and PS4, and why?
Good question. A lot of people ask me that too. I'm going to tell you this. I love, and I've got both the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, but I am a PlayStation guy. I love PlayStation. New Zealand is known affectionately around the gaming world as the PlayStation nation. So that's what we're known as in gaming circles in other markets. So PlayStation sells, like, per capita or per head. It used to be something like 4-1. So there'd be 4 PlayStations for every 1 Xbox. In this country, and only in this country. Around the world, it's more 50-50. So everyone called us the PlayStation nation. That's how much people loved PlayStation. And I was, for me, that's not the reason why, because, but it was just, I just like the controller, and I like the fact that you could play Blu-rays on it, and I like the interface. So for me, PlayStation, that's why. That's the reason why I'm a PlayStation guy.
Yeah, for me, I would be PlayStation, and I'm also a big fan of Nintendo Switch because it's portable and you can take it around wherever you want.
That's right.
And it's like you can go up to like 4-player on most games.
Yeah, and that's right. So Switch is awesome. So Nintendo always does really cool stuff. Their Zeldas, their Marios, and then their Switch is really, really cool. So, but PlayStation, out of all of them, for me, the best.
Are New Zealand brands coming on board overseas? There are some major players involved.
Yeah. So New Zealand brands, yeah, for sure. So we're seeing lots of them now get into it. So, I mean, there's a long list, but some of our bigger partnerships have been with Samsung, Vodafone New Zealand, Ola, which is a ride-sharing service. We've worked with Carl's Jr., we've worked with Mammoth. And then there's lots more. We've got a whole bunch coming up this year, which we're part of as well. So lots of great partners there. Probably missing a few, but those are kind of your big ones. So we've got the biggest players now wanting to be in esports. And that wasn't the case going back, which is great, right? Like when Vodafone gets in and the Samsungs, that it's really, really cool outside of the what we call endemic sponsors, your PCs and your keyboards. So they're already going to be there. Overseas, what's interesting is overseas, all brands are in there, and some of those brands you wouldn't identify with gaming. Things like BMW, Mercedes-Benz. Like when people think about those brands as really flash car brands, they don't think about them being in gaming, but actually they're in there. So so we're starting to see them come in now. So yeah, it's going really good.
With all the live streams, what's your favorite gaming brand? Guerrilla Gaming?
Like as far as like the equipment?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, so there's lots, right? Like there's, for me, again, I'm not a PC player because a lot of the PC players, they have a different look. Playtech, they do all our equipment and they do a great job. Like Playtech custom build all our PCs up there. So they look nice and they're awesome. I really like, I'm a Logitech guy, so I like the Logitech peripherals. That's what I like to use. I mean, a lot of people like Razer or other stuff. But for me, I like Logitech. I think they're cool and they feel comfortable. So that's what I play with at home.
Which which brands do you think are globally winning?
Right, I tell you, yeah.
And why?
So the brands that do good are the brands that understand esports, or at least they perceive to understand esports. So I tell you some cool ones. So League of Legends is the largest video game on earth, right? The largest game. It is huge. Tens of millions. The League of Legends World Cup had more people watch it than the Super Bowl. It is the most watched sport or content piece on the planet, right? Absolutely ginormous. Packed stadiums in Korea watching the best League of Legends teams, and they are millionaire gamers, okay? So League of Legends is that big. So Louis Vuitton, as in the really fancy fashion brand, customized cases for the trophy. So people are like, yo, that's so cool. So like that was just so rad. There's brands like Mercedes. So they drove like all the top players that were going to the championships were driving Mercedes. Like that stuff is so cool. So they're doing a great job, from those kind of really high-end brands integrating into what you'd expect not being. And McDonald's did a great job. So McDonald's, as you'd expect, McDonald's overseas last year, they went out and surrounded themselves with a really big shooter game called CSGO, big event overseas in Denmark. And all their billboards were just a picture of a product, so like a hamburger or a Big Mac, and it just had like frag. And people were like, exactly, right? So you go shake your head, you go, what's a frag? But if you're a CSGO player, you know what that means. So it's just so cool, right? Like they identified a cool phrase within the video game that gamers would get, and they mirrored it to a burger or a fries or a combo or something that people would get. And that won a lot of awards for doing that. It was like just so cool because it was like understated. So those are some of the brands that I think have done some really cool stuff.
We want to see a New Zealand team at the highest levels. What do New Zealand esports look like for you in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I'm on the New Zealand Esports Federation, which is like Rugby New Zealand or Cricket New Zealand. So I've found that, and we're pushing for it to be recognised as a sport. So we believe that esports should just be like any other sport, right? And so that's the big thing. So if you ask me what it's going to be like in 5 years, Sport New Zealand is going to say it is a sport. The players are then going to be able to play for their country credibly in the sense of you are now an E-Black. So we have a trademark called the E-Black. So you can actually play as E-Blacks. And our logo is pretty rad. It looks like pixels, like Minecraft pixels, as a silver fin.
I love how like all our teams are related to New Zealand, like the Tuataras, the All Blacks, the Silver Ferns.
Right, and that's it. So we had to come up with a name. We were like, what would be good for gaming? We called them the E-Blacks. Right, we were like, that seems cool. And then our logo was pixelated Minecraft blocks. So that's going to happen. And then I've been on like shows like yours. I've been on the news and on radio, and we even talked about at the start that esports will be an Olympic sport. And so then you're going to see in the next 5 years, all of a sudden, we're going to be sending our Olympians. So you're going to have all our traditional athletes, a basketball team heading out. We're going to have our runners, our swimmers, and we're going to be sending out our Fortnite players or our CSGO players. Like, how cool is that, right? Like, I mean, that is so cool. And so I'm really passionate about that. I just think it's so... Everyone should have the ability to pursue their things to the highest level. And I say things, whether it's surfing is now an Olympic sport. Awesome. Like some people years gone by were like, you can't, what, gold medal for surfing? Like that, people wouldn't do that 10 years ago. So I see esports like that. It's going to be so cool. And you'll be 5 years from now and you're going to go, I remember that conversation because now you see them on the news and they'll be up there as part of the team and they'll be able to try to win. So for me, that's what's going to happen with New Zealand esports.
What do you think about the future of mobile versus PC?
Yeah, good question. So in the East, out of Korea is the home of esports. You know that? So Korea's like the Fiji is to rugby. Like, how people are fanatical if you go to Fiji about rugby. I mean, New Zealand loves rugby, but Fiji, it's like a religion. In Korea, esports is their religion. They love it. They're national, like it's a national sport. And so in that part of the world, mobile gaming is like this. It's through the roof. And that's because of commuting and it's easy and everyone downloads and plays games. So mobile and all the data I see, everything that's coming forward is mobile is huge. In the West, it's not as developed. It's getting big, and the West is, the American market, the Europe market, the ANZ market is, it's coming. So PC games, I think there's going to be a natural separation of leagues. PC gamers are the hardcore ones. They're the ones who are like, man, I'm like core to the end, right? This is me, like to the max. Like, to be a PC gamer, you've got to have the best equipment, you've got to be good, and they won't change, right? To me, they're the purest. They're the purest of the pure, and they'll always be the biggest games as well. League of Legends, Dota. So League of Legends, like I said, most watched. Dota, 36 million this year for the prize pool, right? So huge. But mobile will be ones where it's more the casual player. So there'll be huge reach where people can play. And what people aren't talking about so much is around 5G. The 5G kind of piece where imagine sitting on the bus today and being able to enter a tournament against anyone in the world and be fast enough to be able to play. At the moment, you can't do that with mobile. The games are only kind of like certain games. You can't play League of Legends at a level, you can't really do that. So that's what's going to happen. And so when I say it, I think they're going to be two complete categories, but they're going to be different audiences that'll play between the two.
Reflecting on your journey to date, what has surprised you the most?
What has surprised me the most, and this may seem bad to some people who are watching this, is I'm surprised at the naivety of people, right? That sounds like a pop shot. So I'm not surprised that LPL did some leads. I'm not surprised that sports teams have got involved. I'm not surprised that broadcast, because, going back 5 years, I kind of, in my mind, felt that was always going to be the case. But what has surprised me the most, and it's going to be negative, this is like a negative thing, is the amount of people that still laugh at it and go, it's not a thing. Like, I don't want my kids playing video games. What is streaming? Like, esports is not a sport. Like, all those things which is kind of negative. And and to me, it's kind of like, I find that bit so surprising. Like, it's like, it's crazy to think that. So I always say to people, okay, cool, like, because they have these stereotypes, right? The stereotype is that the gamer is some dude who's like stuck at home with a somewhat pot belly, drinks heaps of Red Bulls, got a little beard, and has a comic T-shirt on, right? Like, that's a stereotype, right?
That's not ninja.
Correct. That's not ninja. That's not you. That's not me. That's like, and so that's the bit that I'm most surprised. I'm surprised that people don't realize that is the stereotype, when the reality is, and this is a great stat, really, is 48% of gamers in New Zealand are female. They're women. Like, and if you ask most women, they don't identify. So you say, "Are you a gamer?" They go, "No." And I go, "Okay, but have you played Pokemon Go, or have you played Clash Royale on your mobile?" And they all go, "Oh yeah, I've done that, but I'm not a gamer." I say, you see what I mean? So they say that because they go, this is an identification. So that's what's surprising to me. And then I go, and when I go to parents, so people in this room, they go, how come it's so big? I go, okay, have you got kids? Like, do you have a PlayStation or an Xbox in your house? They're like, yeah. Do they play? Okay, yeah. And everyone in the room, right, is like, oh yeah, they will play. And it's like, okay, so 10 of you in the room, we have 10 gaming consoles. So isn't everyone playing? Because 98% of Kiwis play games. And so I'm just surprised that people kind of have the stereotype. I'm just surprised that people don't understand that gaming is so big, because it is big. That's my surprise.
How do you ensure to keep focused on the right things?
Good question. And I think this is a good question for people who are budding entrepreneurs, right, in general. I always say to people, my best analogy, and I don't know whether I heard that or read that or whatever, but I always liken it that way, is think about it when you're in a boat, right, and you imagine being in a boat in the ocean. It's a big ocean, right? And so you got to row, but you can't quite see the island that you're heading for, because, and sometimes winds come and they're turbulent and they bounce you around. So to stay on course is quite hard. And I was liking the rowing of the boat to something like the day-to-day tasks. I've got to go and do this. I've got to be at that meeting. I've got to do all those types of things, right? So those things are just, whatever job you do, you have to do those things. You've always got to row the boat. But what you have to do to stay focused is sometimes stop, think of yourself in the plane above the boat, and go to yourself, I'm in the plane now. Now I can see my boat down the bottom, and I can see 4 islands. Like, it's a lot clearer for me up there, because I'm like right up and I can see, and you're rowing the same direction, you're going nowhere because you're probably going in a circle and you don't know what island you're going for. So it clarifies what you're doing. And so that's the analogy, right? Then all of a sudden you go, oh, I want to get to that island. I want to get there that quickly. I need to row that way. And it becomes clear. So for me, I always take I stop for a second and I always think to myself, what is the island I want to get to? So for example, if it's Let's Play Live in real time, it's like, okay, the big island is, for example, I want to be in Australia, or I want to do a deal with a sports group. So that's a very direct thing that I can focus on. It's not about being here with you at 4 o'clock, or it's not about being at the office for another meeting or sending emails. That's just the big thing that I want to achieve. So it's very clear for me that that's the big thing that I've got to do. So that's how I stay focused. And I think if people get too caught up in the little bits, I'd say to them, think about just taking a breath, jump in your plane above the boat, decide where you're heading, where your boat needs to be rowed, and it's a lot clearer and easier to identify. So that's my that's how I do it.
Who inspires you?
You know what? There isn't any one person that inspires me, right?
Do you inspire yourself?
I don't inspire myself. I'd like to think that if people want to take something from the journey, or I leave something for them, that's great. My legacy personally is, if I can have people in high schools that I help set up that, it's not about me, the person. I'm not really interested in whether it's Duane Mutu did this. I just kind of think it'd be kind of cool one day to look back on your rocking chair and go, LPR is a household name. Or every kid in New Zealand has the ability to go to a high school, join the chess club, join the rugby team, or join an esports club. Like that would be something that those are the bits I care about more. I was part of the group that made sure that esports was a sport. And I sit back again in my rocking chair and we've got all these Olympians that won silver or gold in esports. And that's the bit that that's the bit for me that I go, that's cool to inspire someone, or that's the bit that drives me. But when I say not one person inspires me, I really talk about everyone has great things, right? Like everyone has great bits. I like bits of people that I kind of take from them as far as inspiration. I mean, Kobe's relevant, right?
Yeah.
And everyone talks about his Mamba mentality. And for people who aren't basketball fans, they talk about Kobe worked harder than anyone. That was his whole thing. He was a winner. He wanted to work harder than you, but his bit was, I will outwork you. He had talent, but he was like, I'm going to be a better worker than you. I'm going to be at the gym first, and I'm going to be the last to leave. When I get on the court, I'm going to make sure mentally I'm better than you. I'm going to break you down. So I love that bit. I love people like Bob Marley. I love the fact that, someone like Bob Marley, people go, oh, why do you like Bob Marley? Because of what he does in his pastime? No, it's not because of that. It's because I go, how cool is it if you're Bob Marley? Because he was able through his music to unite a country. I mean, for him to be able to bring two warring factions, he got shot at, he got bullets in his body. He did that. And if you watch those documentaries, that is a phenomenal achievement, So I like those pieces, I like Kobe for his mentality. I like Bob Marley. I like, different aspects. So it depends on what you're asking me, if you said, I'm being a bit vague, but because it's who inspires you about that, like who's a good public speaker, who do you like from a mental perspective, who do you like from all those things, and that's about. So there's lots of people. I like lots of traits of many, many people.
If you could go back in time, is there any advice would you want to give yourself?
Yes, I would give myself advice that, because I'm getting old, you're not. You've got your life ahead of you. You're lucky. Is what I would say is, we put a lot of pressure on getting education. Very important. Like, I'm still an advocate of old school. Like, you should get a good education, you should work hard, get good grades, because it opens up opportunities, right? What I'd say to myself is, don't sweat the small stuff. People always talk about that, but it's about the world will always unfold how it's going to unfold to an extent. And so you got to think to yourself, I need to not worry so much about, I used to get kind of caught up on, man, I got to get a job, and then it's got to be this, and I got to make sure that I go to uni and I can show that I've got this degree, and then I've got this really good job, and I'm going to do all those things. You know what? That's good for some people it's not. And the world doesn't work like that. Like, people should be teaching us about tax. They don't teach you that at school. I mean, they teach accountancy. They need teaching us stuff about, when you go to a job, even though you might have a great degree, you're learning on the job, like people are teaching you how to work in this area or that area. So I just say, don't sweat it. Don't sweat the small stuff, and let the world unfold that way, rather than being so regimented to just one thing. Get lots of life skills, and then pull yourself back and be more focused on something that you love and that you like. Because if you have to do it every day, it's a lot easier for me to get up every day, because I'm I love it. I love what I do. So I get up every day feeling pumped. I want to chat to you today. I was excited about that. I was excited to have some meetings this morning. I loved it. I love today. Today is a good day. Would I like it doing something else, being a builder? No, because that wasn't what I wanted to do. So you need to do what you're passionate about. If you do that, money will come and success will come. Like that's the reality I say to people is if you do it, you love it, you get good at it, you'll get money. It shouldn't be the other way around.
Final question. If you could play any esports final in the world, which tournament would you play in and which player?
Okay. If I could play, there's two answers. The one that would be rad would be League of Legends Worlds, because ultimately that's the biggest show on earth. And to get there and to play with someone like Faker, so Faker's seen, up until recently as the best player in the world, it's like, he would be wicked, and that staging would be amazing. But I think, personally, I would love to play in a Pro-Am Fortnite event, right? So it'd be cool to be with Ninja, me and him, Tifu. I want to partner up for Ninja and see how I go. That'd be cool, right? Or partner up and you got like Paul George for something like, an NBA star. So I'd love to play in one of the big Fortnite Pro-Am events. I just reckon it'd be fun. It'd be cool going around the map with, say, me and you or whoever that celebrity is, whether it's a traditional or an esport. That would be rad. So that's probably the one for me that I'd love to do.
It's been amazing chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time.
No worries. Keep up the good work, and it's hopefully you got something from it. But yeah, it's been awesome being in it, man. High five it. All right.
How was it?
Wicked.